Kitchen. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Southern Gal's Kitchen. We're going to be making some banana bread today, but we're going to be doing a little experiment with some different ways to make it. We're going to kind of test them and see which ones we like the best. So hang on, we'll be back in just a minute. To grind our grain, I've got a cup of einkorn here, because a cup of grain, and here's my bag of grain. A cup of grain will equal about a cup and a half of flour. And I'm going to use a cup and a fourth of whole grain and a cup and a fourth of all-purpose einkorn. So I'm going to grind a cup and a half, and what's left I can put it in the freezer. You always turn on, at least the machine I have, you turn it on first. I've got it on a real fine setting, almost the finest. Oh, there it is, a fine. I want a pretty fine flour for my banana bread. First recipe that we're going to make on a banana bread is going to use half all-purpose einkorn, and I have a cup and a fourth of that. And I ground this einkorn from grain. Just took the einkorn berries and ground my own grain, which I do a lot of. We're going to use a fourth and a cup of the fresh ground. Now, when you grind einkorn fresh, it's called whole grain, and it's going to have all the bran and all the germ in it, and so it's a heavier product. I have made, in fact, this is my recipe for my cookbook, and I made it with 100% ground whole grain. But I thought I want to do a little experiment and see if it's better with part all-purpose flour. The all-purpose einkorn, you can buy it or you can make your own. You can take the whole grain, grind it, and sift it out. And I've shown videos on that. But the all-purpose has the bran and the germ removed. It's still einkorn. It's still easier to digest for most people, a lot of people. But it doesn't have the nutrition that the whole grain does. I like having some whole grain, so I'm going to put half. So that'd be 1 1/4 cups of the whole grain. And I like to just shuffle it. That's 2. I don't want to lose count. I like to shuffle it in instead of just dipping and getting too much. Just shuffle it in, level it off. 3, 4. Lose track. Sometimes you get distracted, you lose track. 4, 5. That'd be, since this is a 4th cup, that'd be 1 1/4 cups. Now, when I look at these 2 flours, the one that I sifted, they're both kind of a yellowish tint to them. And the yellow tint is because they're high in vitamin A and vitamin C and lutein. Lutein is really good for your eyes, and that's one reason einkorn is so good for you. And besides, it's rich in the whole grain has all those B vitamins and magnesium and all the zinc, all these things our body needs. But they both have the yellow tinge, but the fresh ground is a little bit more of a yellow color, just a yellow beige kind of look. It makes good bread, but if you use it 100%, now I do in cookies and things, I'll share some recipes, do some videos where I do 100% whole grain. They're awesome. But when I make bread, I often lighten up the load with half all-purpose. And again, I've shown videos on how to grind your own and sift it and get the bran and things out. You can make your own all-purpose, or you can buy it. You can buy it all-purpose. So try the half and half. We're going to see how this works. And then we're going to try this bread a few other ways too. We're going to see again, I'm going to kind of test them out. So we have our 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose einkorn, 1 1/4 cups of the whole grain einkorn. Set that aside. We have 1 tablespoon of baking powder, And we have 1 teaspoon of sea salt. I have fine sea salt, I grind my own. But if you grind your own, when you get it in there, kind of mash it out. Make sure there's no lumps, because sometimes it'll get a few little lumps in it. You just want to mash them out and it should be okay. You can sift it if you want to, but I usually don't. So we got a teaspoon of that. We've got, we're going to kind of stir this together. Banana bread really is mixing wet ingredients with dry ingredients. That's all it is. So we're going to take our dry, our wet, we have our dry. We're going to take 2 eggs that I've beaten up just a little bit with a fork, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and 1/2 stick of butter. That in there. And we've got a cup of sour cream. A 1/2 cup of sour cream. Not a cup, 1/2 cup of sour cream. We're going to mix these together with the mixer, just enough to mix them. You could probably even use a whisk, but I usually use a mixer just to make sure I get it mixed together right. And we've got a cup of sugar. And you know, I make my own. I usually use cane sugar. I use half cane sugar and half alternative sweetener, and that cuts the sugar in half. I didn't do that in the original recipe, but I do that nowadays. Now I have my oven set on 350, and I have my loaf pan greased and lined with a little bit of greased and lined with some parchment paper. We're going to just beat this up, just barely mix it. Splash it all on myself. We're going to turn it down. The goal here is just to mix the eggs and butter and sugar and everything together. Just wet and dry. That's all it is. If you beat your bread, your muffins and bread with your flour, you'll build too much gluten, and you don't want to do that. So it's best to beat this separate. Just get it all mixed up. And we're going to stir in. We're just going to stir mashed up bananas in. A cup of mashed bananas. It's about 3 medium-sized bananas mashed up. Get a cup. Just stir that in. Just mix it up. That's all you're wanting to do. Then we're going to mix our dry into our wet. That's really all there is to it. Very simple to mix up. Muffins and quick breads. They're called quick breads. Quick breads for a reason. They're very quick. So we're going to add our flour in, or I'll just add this to the flour. Kind of stir it up a little bit. You don't want to overmix. When you get the flour in there, you're going to mix as little as possible. You just want to get it stirred together, mixed together, and really that's all. Our pan's ready. We'll get it in our pan. I like making the quick bread with sour cream. I believe you could, I haven't done it, so I'm not going to guarantee that, but I believe you could use yogurt too. But I had sour cream on hand, so that's what I usually use, is the sour cream. It makes a good tender quick bread. But the einkorn with half whole grain in here really bumps up the B vitamins, the magnesium, manganese, lutein. Einkorn is high in lutein. If we had more einkorn in our diet, we'd have less eye trouble, I would think, because lutein is what they give you for your eyes. And there's just a long list of nutrients, probably 26 to 30, in almost all whole grains. But by using half of the all-purpose, lighten it up, you still have 50% of all that good nutrition in there, so you've got a lot. And I really like it that way. Lightens it up a little bit. You just mix this. There's still flour in the bottom. And with that mixed in, so I've scraped the bottom of your bowl. We're just going to put this in our prepared pan. This is kind of what I'd call a normal sweet banana bread. If you like less sugar, I guess you could try a little bit less, but since I'm using half alternative sugar, which cuts my carbs in half, I'm okay with it the way it is, with the cup of sugar in it. I said half cup of sugar, half cup alternative. I just keep it mixed up in my jug, and half and half. I've got it ready when I want it. Set it down a minute. Bring this out to the edge as well. We'll get the rest of it in there. I'll show you what we're going to do next. make this even better. I know it's pretty good the way it is. You can make muffins out of this too. Just bake them a little less time. Takes about close to an hour in the oven. You just watch it. When a toothpick comes out clean, it's ready. But 50, when I made the recipe, I made it into muffins. For the muffins, I baked them like 20 to 25 minutes. But for the bread, I'm going to bake them a little bit longer. I've toasted up about a cup of broken pecans. Just put them on your heat. Do not leave them. But the minute you start smelling them, you'll smell them when they're starting to cook. Keep them stirred and watch. You often leave them and you'll have burnt pecans really fast. And I'm going to sprinkle some of these right on the top. You can put from a half cup to a cup, whatever you want. I'm going to probably use most of these because I want to kind of cover them pretty good in there. Probably won't use them all. And then I'm going to kind of mash that in, not mash down too much, but mash it down a little bit. I'll show you kind of what I'm doing. Just kind of mashing that into the batter. Gives it kind of a crunchy top. And then, make this even better. We're going to sprinkle just a little bit of cane sugar. Now I don't do too much. That's the cane sugar. This is the raw sugar, where it's a crunchy kind of sugar. I'm just going to barely sprinkle down on top because the bread's already pretty sweet. Gives it a crunchy top. You can do a streusel topping, but I usually just do it like this. Great looking bread. We're going to bake it off. I'll check it in 45-50 minutes. It might take an hour, hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes. We'll see, because like I said, I've always made it into muffins. But we'll see how it works and we'll see how it turns out. Our bread is now out of the oven and it smells really, really good. It looks amazing. You see that? Got those nuts on top, bananas on the inside, and you know we used half the sugar because we used half cane sugar and half of the alternative sweetener. We used half Einkorn all-purpose and half that I ground whole grain. I ground it fresh today, and it smells amazing. We're gonna see how it tastes. And look at the inside and see what that looks like too. Just cut a piece. Use a serrated enough. And by the way, this pan is this pan was about 10 by 5. It's a little bigger baking pan. If it's smaller, you may have to make a part of it into muffins or something, or use a little mini. But if you have the bigger size pan, that works best. This is still pretty warm. I've let it set, oh, I don't know. I left it set a few minutes in the pan, and maybe it's been 15-20 minutes. It probably could set longer, but I want to go ahead and set it and show you what it looks like. It looks amazing. Beautiful bread. I don't know if I can pick this up without breaking it. You can see it that way maybe. And I'm going to take a bite here. The way it looks and the way it smells, I think it's going to be awesome. You can taste that banana and those pecans. And just a little tiny sprinkling of raw sugar on the top. Just a little bit of crunch. This is soft, moist. It's delicious. I don't know if it can be any better, but we're going to finish our test. We're going to test it with the same recipe with a couple of other ways. One of them will probably be, but we'll do it 2 or 3 ways. Probably 3 ways. And if you like banana bread and you like einkorn, this is a hit. You got to try it. I'm going to have a hard time keeping the meat down. I have my grain mill setting set on 1, just like I did when I did the grinding for the einkorn berries. I have a 1.5 cups here. Like I said, I've already picked through them, put them in this little bowl so I can get them in my grinder easier. Have a bowl here to catch my flour, and you turn this on my model. You have to go by your instructions. Mine, you turn it on, and then you add the grain, and you have to let it run till all the grain goes through. So here we go. Put our spelt. There's our ground grain. And again, the one setting on this machine is a pretty powerful machine. It's pretty much making pastry flour. So you want to grind your flour to a really fine, as fine as you can to make this bread and make it turn out the same way that I'm making it. Okay, we're on our second bread, and we're going to make this banana bread exactly the same way as we did the other, the exact same recipe, because I want to test the different flours and see how they affect the bread done exactly the same way. So I already have my liquid all mixed up here. Same thing I had in the other recipe. I'm not going to run you through the whole thing again. And then I've got my baking powder and salt in here. This is my all-purpose einkorn, and I'm going to use, instead of the whole grain einkorn, I'm going to use the whole grain spelt, which I just ground for you. And we're going to use 1 1/4 cups of that and 1 1/4 cups of this. Now let me talk about this all-purpose einkorn. This is one that's high extraction. In the video yesterday, I said, it's pretty yellow, and almost as yellow as my whole grain. Because the high extraction with this company, they only take out about 20% of the bran. So a lot of the nutrition, the germ and all that is still in there. But the problem with that too, I do buy it sometimes, but I prefer grinding it myself and doing my own sifting, take out about 20%. Because once flour is ground, within 24 hours it starts losing nutrition. The longer it sits unrefrigerated, the more nutrition it's going to lose. There's nothing, you can't beat just grinding it yourself and doing some sifting if you want some of the bran out. If I wanted to take bran out of half of it, I'd take part of the bran out of half of it and leave the other whole grain, just like I'm doing here. But you make those choices, and you may not have a mill, and you may not want to buy one, then just buy the flour. I did buy this. Just know it's going to be a little less nutritious. So I have 1 1/4 cups of the all-purpose einkorn, and I'm going to put in 1 1/4 cups of the ground spelt, freshly ground, no sifting, nothing taken out. And we're going to see how that works. Now, if you'll notice, I'm shuffling, kind of sifting or shuffling my flour into my cup. That's the best way to do flour, regardless. I mean, that's just, otherwise you pack it down too much. Freshly ground meal is it's very fine. This is, like I said, ground very fine, like a pastry flour almost. It's 3, but it's very light, and you want to keep it light. So I just use this anytime I'm doing flour. The longer flour sets, the more compact it gets too. This is very, very light and fluffy. This will be 5, which is 4th cup measure, so that's going to be 1 1/4. There we go. The rest of this spelt, I will label it in my bag. I'll put it in my freezer and keep it, and I'll use it for either other baking, because in the freezer it's going to keep a whole lot longer and preserve its nutrition. It's sitting out that it's going to run it. Refrigeration helps. Freezer's going to keep it longer than any. And I'll use this, sometimes I'll use ground flours for if I'm cooking something that calls for breading or flour. But generally I'm saving it and using it for baking. Sometimes I make gravy and I'll use my whole grains, or I make biscuits, and I might have some ground up whole wheat, I might have some ground up spelt, I might have some ground up einkorn. Sometimes I'll just make a blend. I'll just make my baked goods. But you have to have recipes. I mean, I've done this baking for about 40 years. I wrote the book on einkorn, spelt, and quinoa. Even before einkorn, when it first started, it wasn't even popular yet, and I wrote that book and sold a lot of copies. Right now I'm working on other books and updating, but you kind of have to know what you're doing. That's when I'm going to do some videos. I'm going to show you how to do it. We'll do some mixed grain things too. So we'll set this aside. I have my pan, same size pan as I had yesterday, that 10 by 5, I believe it is, 4.5 or 5. Got my wet. I'm going to put the dry. I'm going to mix it up really well with, you have to mix up that baking powder. You could sift this if you wanted to, but you can usually just do it with a whisk so you don't really have to sift. Now I've got my toasted pecans here. I'm going to do this again exactly the same way as I did the previous bread because I want a true test here. Like test kitchen today. I do a lot of testing in my kitchen anyway. So we're going to add this in. Slowly add it in. You don't have to just dump it all in there. It's easier to stir it up and just kind of do it in batches. And then we're going to bake this off again at 350, 45 minutes. I'll check it. It's done. I'll put a toothpick in the center. If it takes longer, I'll let you know. And we'll come back. And I use Einkorn spelt. I use all kinds of grains. I do use wheat too. Well, Einkorn is wheat, but modern wheat. Sometimes I'll grind it up. I do a lot of heirloom grains, but I love Einkorn and I love spelt. And we'll talk more about them as we go into the videos. We are at the end of our bread baking, and I have 3 different loaves that I made 3 different ways. All of them, as I've showed you, had all-purpose Einkorn as half of the base. So half the flour in each one was all-purpose. Half the flour in this one was whole grain Einkorn with all-purpose Einkorn. Half in this one was half all-purpose Einkorn and half fresh ground spelt, and this was fresh ground Einkorn. And half of this one was all-purpose Einkorn and fresh ground hard red wheat. I wanted to try the wheat against the Einkorn for texture, flavor, and so forth. So I gave most of the Einkorn loaf to my son and his family, and they loved it. The one with all Einkorn. They're all good. There's not a bad one in the bunch. But we're going to do a little taste test. This is the half all-purpose Einkorn and half whole grain fresh ground Einkorn. It's amazingly good. You can't beat Einkorn for flavor. It is just so good. This one is the half all-purpose Einkorn and half fresh ground spelt. Now with spelt, as I expected, it's a little bit denser, a little bit more structure. This one can be pretty soft. I had to eat some of it with a fork, but that's okay because I like the flavor. This one's, you can hold it in your hand a little bit better. We're going to taste it. It's all good. I can tell a little bit of difference in the texture, and it's a little bit, it's so good. But I still like, personally, the Einkorn the best. It just has the most flavor. But spelt is very good too. It's still an ancient grain, still healthy, and I use spelt a lot in cooking. A lot of times I'll use half all-purpose, even ground wheat, no less Einkorn, and spelt in a lot of baked goods. But this is very, very, very good. If you got spelt on hand, some all-purpose Einkorn, try some of this. This last one's made with the half all-purpose Einkorn and fresh ground hard red wheat. Let's give it a taste. Now I have a hard time. This one again has wonderful structure, obviously, because wheat does give things good structure. It's a matter of whether you want the structure or the flavor. I'll go for the flavor. They're all excellent. I would make any one of them again. This one's very much like the spelt. Kind of hard to tell the difference, but it's a modern wheat, where spelt is an ancient grain. But I still, even though the texture is a little softer, tiny bit more crumbly, I mean, I can still pick it up. This is still my favorite for flavor. You cannot beat Einkorn for flavor, but they're all good. So if I had to rate them, I'd give Einkorn 1, spelt a 2, and the wheat a 3. Because the wheat has slightly less flavor even than the spelt, even though they're very similar. So I hope you enjoyed this little experiment, and I may do some more. I'd make a lot of banana bread though. Might do some different kinds of things and show you with different flours, taste, texture. Some people like spelt, some people like Einkorn, and a lot of people still use fresh wheat. Wheat is definitely a healthy grain. It's just harder to digest for some people. I sprout my wheat, I sprout my einkorn berries, and spelt berries too. And I've got a video on that. But that helps all of them be more digestible, even though the einkorn's pretty digestible anyway. But I still sprout it. Makes it that much better. And the grains keep longer in the long run. So I'm okay going through that process. But I hope you'll try some of these and let me know what you think. We'll see you on the next show. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you enjoyed this little bananas 3 ways. We'll see you later.